How you doing, ma'am? Could I ask you a few questions? So that was okay conversation. I think she was thinking about it a little bit more, but she wasn't really saying too much. I really like these cards. I got some of these from the Humane League. There was like a cow one, and a chicken one, a pig one. They're really like eye-catching. I like them a lot. Oh, two people at once. How you doing? Could I ask you a few questions? Gotcha. Yeah, I should have asked her. Alright, so now I can test out how loud this bus is and kind of see how long it's going to be here. But they unloaded real quick. They just pulled right up and started getting off, so that's a good sign. This is the bus that was here earlier. They were only gone for like an hour. I don't know where it went. Do you think it would be a little crazy to do push-ups in between my conversations? It's hot out here, but it's not that bad. I didn't bring enough water. But when I come out here earlier, I miss my time to work out, my exercise time. Normally at 9 o'clock. I try to follow a very disciplined, structured life. So, yeah. I can get into it a little bit. But, let's see, it's been a couple minutes here. Yeah, so I normally exercise 9 o'clock every morning. I can walk you through my normal day. I changed a lot of things in my life. I don't know the best way to describe this. Systems, the different habits that I had. Wow, it just got really windy out of nowhere. I started changing my diet. I started tracking things, okay? Actually, that's where everything started. I started tracking different things in my life. So, it probably started back when I was working for a manufacturing company, and it was my job to optimize our processes And I started tracking everything at work and making major improvements. And I was like, why don't I start doing this with like my regular life? And I started tracking my sleep, my diet, and my exercise. And I got one of these Oura rings. One of the best purchases I've probably made in my entire life. There's a couple of things that I've spent not that much money on that I feel like everybody should have, and this is one of them. It doesn't have to be an Oura ring, but some type of tracker like this. But this was the first ring to market. But now there's like the Whoop band. That's pretty good, but they've done a couple of kind of sketchy things in their business. So I don't know if I would support them, but I absolutely recommend the Oura ring. So I started tracking my sleep, my exercise, my diet. Started to improve everything. I started testing my blood regularly myself at home. I don't get the results, but I can draw the blood and send it to a lab. How you doing? Can I ask you a couple questions? So I started, improving all my biomarkers. So I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not like certified health coach, but I have years of experience of tracking things and improving things and building a system that works best for me. So if you are interested in trying to restructure your life any certain way and just being a little bit more disciplined with things, I can probably help with that. Just reach out to me. How you doing?
Sorry, what?
How you doing? Would I be able to ask you a couple questions for my video?
Sure, what's up?
So, I got a mic here that you could use. So, my first question is, well, let me introduce myself first. My name is Jake.
Okay.
Are you a local in Gettysburg? Okay, that's cool. So my first question is just about animals. How do you feel about animals? I like that you're thinking about it.
I've never really been asked.
Yeah. What's the first kind of animal that like pops into your head? Do you think about like a cat or dog, or? The last lady thought about a bird. She liked birds.
Dogs would probably be the first one.
Yeah.
Following that would probably be turtles or like otters.
That's cool. You kind of remind me of a buddy of mine that's got a turtle. So it's funny that you said that. How do you feel about animal abuse?
Animal abuse is bad regardless of like what it's done for.
Right. Especially if it's unnecessary. You know, most of the abuse is generally unnecessary. So how do you feel about the farm animals that we force in the slaughterhouse, like cows, pigs, chickens? Do you think we should consider them?
I think that cows, chickens, livestock. Livestock is okay. Like slaughterhouses and stuff are okay. I feel like the problem arises when it is done on an industrial scale and how we currently do it, because especially because we eat so much more food than we actually need, and a lot of it ends up being wasted.
Yeah.
And treating animals that way is just objectively wrong.
Right.
Now, eating meat is fine. Livestocking is fine, provided the animals are taken care of prior to dying essentially, or being consumed.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, they don't die. Like that's what some people say. Like, well, hopefully they live a long, happy life, and we kill them like at the end of their life, or they die at the end of their life, and then we use them. But we do kill them, right?
Yes.
And then they actually most farm animals die at just a fraction of their life.
Yes.
Like some of them are babies. Like so
in the case of like veal.
Yeah, exactly. And veal normally comes from the dairy industry. So most people think that like vegetarians don't kill animals, but in the dairy industry, they do kill the baby cows, the baby male cows for veal because they can't produce milk. So they're kind of like a waste product. And then same thing with eggs, the male chicks, they just normally blend them up on the first day of life because they're a waste product. So so yeah, even eggs and cheese and dairy, they do kill animals in that process.
And the problem with that is that in those cases, the animals are only viewed as a product and not as actual living beings. Which in part is a problem with capitalism, where it's viewed how profit can be made rather than these are animals.
Yeah, so it's interesting. You see them.
It's similar to milk is especially egregious for me because of in order for female cows to produce milk, they have to be pregnant or recently given birth. So you forcibly keep them pregnant so that you can keep generating them.
Yeah, exactly. And then they just take their baby away from them, like first day normally, and like
and then if it's female,
it's just
it gets raised to the point that it can produce milk, and if it's male, it's probably turned into veal.
Yeah, and the cycle continues.
Yes.
So yeah, you see that it's wrong, and it sounds like you're considering all the animals the same. But then you said that it's okay to treat livestock differently. So, like, what would be your reason to treat them different than other animals? Like, just because we've been doing it for a long time, or?
Treating it differently isn't what I would necessarily say. Because I think, especially in cultures where dogs and cats are eaten, or birds, or what have you, that's fine. So long as quality of life before they're consumed and eaten is also fine. Like in the case of cows, like we've discussed, how they only live a fraction of their lives.
Yeah.
If they live 2, 3, 4 years, if they even make it that long, if those lives are in decent condition, or not decent, good conditions, and that they're being taken care of, I think that's okay.
Why though?
But,
like, it's legal, but is it morally okay? Like, and like, will we do that to humans? Like, if we bring them into life, which is kind of wrong, but then we give them a really nice life. We put them in like $1 million mansion, have whatever they want for a fraction of their life. Let's say till they're like 20 years old, because that's kind of how long dairy cows last, in as a percentage. And then we just harvest them for whatever, their organs or whatever, or for meat. Like, would it be wrong to do it to a human?
Wrong or morally right.
To do it to a human?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's on one end or the other. I would say it's fairly morally neutral in terms of animals, which humans are considered a part of if, for whatever reason, we decided to legalize cannabis.
So that would kind of be like in support of slavery, though, a form of slavery. Because isn't that kind of like if we had humans and they were only here for like other humans' benefit,
to consume,
and they would kind of be, they wouldn't be able to like, they'd have freedom during their life, I guess, but then we would decide when their life ends, kind of thing. So like, is that, like, do you see what I mean? Like, do you think that that's morally right? I mean, what would be the difference in those people? Like, what would have to be the difference? You know what I mean? That we would treat them differently than other humans. And then what would the difference be with the animal?
I guess the difference would be when they are consumed, harvested, like when that happens. If they're, in the case of humans, living 4 or 5 years and then dying young versus 40, 50, 60 years and then being life. Whether they die of natural causes or whatever reason. Like if we harvested dead meat.
Yeah, so that's another question that I ask some people sometimes. Why don't we eat people after they pass? Like, that's a lot of meat. Or like your pet. If you had a dog or a cat or something, like, and your cat or dog passes away, why don't we consume them? Like, is it...
This is probably going to sound really messed up, but I think if people wanted to, if that was a choice that somebody wanted to make, that could be something that they could do.
Do you think that would be different if the animal passes and then we consume it? Is that different than an animal that we raise and then kill them when they're still healthy and could have a happy, healthy life ahead of them, and then we just kill them for our benefit to eat them? Do you think that's morally different? Because we had, our pets, we respected them, we gave them a good life their whole life, they died, and then we were to consume them. But so that would be morally better, but then we don't even do that.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's like...
Part of it is the industrial scale at which we consume meat. I think consuming meat is fine. Consuming, in some cases, I mean, I love meat personally.
Yeah.
But the problem arises that we do it on such a scale that not only do we produce more than we actually need, but then whatever excess is left over, there was no point of having that be harvested in the first place. So we essentially keep this cycle turning of industrial meat production, raising livestock to kill and slaughter for whatever they're producing, milk, eggs, whatever, and then end up wasting what we've taken from them, which is the unacceptable part. Like, kind of like if you go and I'm against trophy hunting. Yeah. So like going and hunting just for the sake of hunting. Not I went and hunted, duck hunting, for example, and then we use what's left of the duck. Use the product that we acquired through hunting. Same with fishing. Fishing and killing fish for the sake of fishing up the big thing because I want to have a picture of the big thing and then getting rid of it. Is morally indefensible. Right.
So, but to the animal, do you think that there's a difference to the animal if we're still in the end they're like dying? Or
I think there is. However, I feel like we haven't quite reached a definitive answer yet on that. What I mostly mean is just level of consciousness.
Right, yeah.
Agency. Okay. So.
Right. So do you know what sentience is?
Yeah.
Right. So there's
I also feel like there's like tiers of it. Like, obviously, if you're alive and able to consciously make decisions for yourself, that is a level of sentience.
Right.
But then there's also the ability to do that, but also, I guess, choose how you impact the things around you. Like in the case of us, we can choose. In the case of meat, for example, we can choose not to eat meat and acquire protein from another source.
Right.
If you look at a dog, cat, wolf, bear, wild animals, they have a dietary thing that they consume in order to remain alive. Like if you decided, I'm going to change what my cat eats or my dog eats, and I'm going to feed them this. In many cases, they end up sickly or not quite developing the way that they need to because their dietary needs are what their dietary needs are.
Right. So we do a little bit more research on that because I thought the same thing. And I actually got a dog last year because I rescued a dog over getting another cat because I thought that cats couldn't live vegan and dogs could because of some of the research that I saw. Because dogs are actually omnivores; they can eat both, and cats are obligate carnivores. But I've found some other research and newer products that they actually put in a protein that like mimics chicken.
Yeah.
But it's made from plants.
Yes.
So there's actually a vegan diet for cats and vegan diets for dogs. And the oldest, I'm pretty sure it was the oldest living dog or one of the oldest living dogs was actually a vegan dog. So I thought that was pretty interesting. That's why I ended up rescuing a dog, and then now my dog's vegan. So is my cat.
I mean,
so
dietary as long as the animal is healthy.
Yeah.
Whatever their diet needs to be.
Yeah. So I just kind of transitioned my cat from eating the food. I just got the cat, so I had the animal product food left, but now I have the other food. So yeah, I just started giving him the full like vegan diet. So in like a month or so, I'm gonna take him to the vet and have him get him checked out just to make sure everything's good.
Yeah.
But I had the same thought as you. But once I did a little bit more research and found out there's new stuff out, like my opinion changed on it. So, do you know what living vegan is? Like, what would be the definition of living vegan to you?
What is a vegan diet, or just living vegan generally?
Right. So most people think that vegan is just the diet.
Because there's vegan diet, but then there's also extending it beyond diet. So, like, obviously, when it comes to diet, you wouldn't consume animal products, especially like industrially farmed animal products, but like even stuff that they naturally produce because the way we produce them is unethical. I think the only way you would be able to do that is if you not only had like a farm that raised them appropriately, but also ethically raised them. So, not all the time, but if the animal would said animals, not just for the purpose of making milk, but if it's a male cow, you still raise the male cow at a certain age.
Yeah.
Kind of like the decision to put down like an elderly dog. Like if its body's not functioning anymore, or it's struggling with quality of life, that harvesting it that way. But
I agree. That's not really the way we grow or handle animal products. But you know why? Like why wouldn't they do that?
Because it's easier to manage.
Yeah, and the money.
It's money, and it's just a lot easier, especially in the case of chickens, for them to just corral them all into one place to minimize the amount of space usage and maximize the amount of eggs, poultry, and whatnot that you can produce. And treating it, the way you treat those animals doesn't come into consideration at all. The only concern is with the resulting product.
Yeah.
And I would assume living vegan would also not just refer to not consuming, it would also be not wearing or using products that are produced in a similar fashion.
Yes.
So,
exactly.
Having sheep raised only for you. Well,
right. So the line that we draw being vegan is at Sentience. So there's some research out there that shows even fish and fish are sentient. So, and there is different levels to it. So like the cows and pigs are very conscious and they can perceive things that like are about to happen. Like they can remember things. Chickens not as much. but chickens can remember like up to 100 faces, which is pretty cool. And then fish aren't as conscious, so they can't, or sentient, so they can't really perceive things that are about to happen or like remember things as well as the other animals. But in the moment, when we're like killing them, they feel that.
Yeah,
and yeah. So that's the difference between animals and plants, and where we draw the line at vegan is vegan is a stance against the animal oppression. So it includes, like you said, the whole aspect, from just bringing them in to existence for us, and then just keeping them for our sake, and then deciding when they die. Like, that's any part of that. If you're not doing it in the best interest of the animal, and you're considering like profits or something like that at the end of the day, then that's what exploitative. So like that's where we draw the line. So it's just it's like a boycott against those industries that we don't want to support them if that's not what we agree with. Like the dairy industry is a good example. Like would you support, or just in general, would you support an industry that if you found out they've been lying to you your whole life and you were supporting them, and then you found out you didn't have to be supporting them, and they were kind of, they were lying to you about things like dairy builds strong bones and stuff like that, and it's good for your teeth or things like that. It's like there's new research out that like debunks a lot of that stuff. So it's pretty interesting, but people still believe some of this misinformation that's out there. Until you dig into it a little bit more yourself, you'll realize, that's it's easier to be vegan than people think.
I tend to be skeptical of research generally.
Right, yeah.
Because, especially now, far more so now than the way it used to be, there's no profit incentive to verify. So generally, if you, I could find any number of studies that would say something different than what your studies are saying.
Sure.
Choose the study that corresponds with your belief, which
but like you said,
really serve any purpose. In your case, the studies that would find differently, I would believe more if there are, if it's being verified, different conditions, if there's a similar result. Same with if, for whatever reason, somebody had a study that said the calcium did actually produce its effects, and multiple studies in different conditions were able to verify said findings. Now, there are some cases where I'm a little more willing to side with it, generally when it comes to medicine. Especially if it's something new. You're generally trying to get medicine out to treat whatever it is, especially if it's an epidemic.
Yeah. So I agree with that too, to an extent. Like veganism isn't like, if I had to choose between myself and an animal, I'd rather die. It's like it's only when it's necessary. Right. So like if I was stranded on an island with a pig, I might end up eating that pig. You know what I mean? If that's all I had, kind of thing. And same thing with medicine.
There's still a natural sense of self-preservation. You're not gonna You're not gonna kill yourself just because you would let an animal live.
Yeah.
Interested in staying alive.
Yeah, like if we had to test on animals to make a cure that would save the human race, yeah, I could probably agree with that. We might want to do that.
I'm okay with some animal testing. Mostly for necessary stuff.
Right. So if it's unnecessary, you'd be full stop against it.
Yeah. I'm not a huge fan of cosmetic animal testing, for one.
Yeah. Most of it's unnecessary. There's other ways, other things we could do.
The testing I'm more okay with is on animals that have a similar biological setup to humans.
Right.
The closer you are
monkeys.
To humans, the closer you would be to a human.
Yeah.
That actually makes that testing
You would think more viable, maybe, or like
more viable, because the closer you are to a human, the closer we would be able to either closer to a human immune system, human skin, whatever, being able to, without doing human testing.
Yeah, that was gonna be my next question. So, like why don't we just get humans to do it? Because humans can actually consent, the animals can't, and then like the monkeys, they might be more sentient than some of the other animals. So if you are looking at it on a scale, that could be like morally worse than some of the other ones. But even from the very beginning, though, if we have an option to test on an animal or test on something else, do you think we should like first choose the alternative over the animal testing? You would agree with that, right?
Only if the something else is also able to produce similar results. I'm more willing to test on an animal before a human, but if we were to be able to test on something, substitute the animal for, say, if we are able, for whatever reason, a brick is able to mimic the results of something, you test on the brick rather than the animal because it's unnecessary. Yeah. It's unnecessary suffering. Yeah. But I'm also okay with human testing in cases of informed consent.
Right, yeah, they would have to consent. So you'd be against taking some humans for whatever reason and testing on them against their will without them consenting.
Yes.
Or like what about humans that aren't able to consent, that maybe have the capacity of an animal? Like, would it be okay to take them and then test on them?
No, because they can't give consent.
Okay, so then why would it be okay to test on an animal if they can't give consent?
Ultimately, in some way, I'm not sure how to verbalize it properly so it doesn't sound like super long dialogues. But,
no, it's fine.
I believe that as far as animals are concerned, there's an obvious hierarchy.
Right.
In terms of sentience and because there are different levels of sentience. I wouldn't necessarily consider a dog to be as on the same level of sentience as humans. Obviously, they're social, can communicate and interact with the world around them, but it's not to the same extent or level as the human.
Right. I agree with that. Would you consider that a pig and a dog are actually pretty similar, or pigs are actually more intelligent than dogs?
I'd have to. It's been a while since I looked at the data on this, so I could entirely be wrong at this point. I know that there are some animals that have similar levels of intelligence to humans. They don't necessarily have the same level of sentience, but they do have intellectual capabilities, even if they can't interact with it. Like, for instance, dolphins have an insanely high level of intelligence, but a dolphin's also not going to just come out onto land and start participating in modern day society. It's going to live in its own habitat, and it should be able to continue to live in said habitat. I'm not a big fan of zoos.
Right.
For that reason.
Yeah. Most of the animals in the zoos aren't big fans of being there either. You know, they're all pretty sad.
At least in the case of, let's say, animal testing or ethically sourced farming. They're not testing. I'm more okay with as long as they're not kept in, cages of something very actually in an environment that's somewhat closely resembles it, but the outcome is for something that I would argue is morally good. In the case of an animal, as long as we're eating said animal, more okay than if we're killing all of these animals and then half of the food just rots and never sees use. Or
Yeah.
testing animals for the sake of, I wonder if this cosmetic is going to look this way or react this certain way. Zoos aren't entirely, no, I can't say entirely. I'd say 90% of the purpose of the zoo is to entertain.
Right.
It's there as a form of entertainment. Now, in cases of species, in instances where animals aren't breeding anymore, they're having difficulty just because of their population numbers, pulling them out and allowing that. With the level of sentience that we have, if we can prevent species from dying out, especially due to direct human involvement in the case of climate change, including environment, what have you, then we have a moral imperative to prevent that at the best that we're able to, while also ethically treating where we can.
Yeah. So the best way,
to the best of our ability, we should be ethically treating. However, there are going to be scenarios where we are not ethically treated.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, we should be treating the whole planet good. We should be treating the animals good, and we should be treating ourselves good. And living vegan actually does all of those things really well. So if you live vegan, you can reduce your carbon footprint by 75%. So it's huge. It's the best way you can actually reduce your carbon footprint. Better than getting an electric car or solar panels on your house. Those are like some of the other things, but they're like way lower. So if you want to help,
they're not as impactful. Because one of the other largest impacts is the fact that we industrially farm.
Right.
So the fact that we industrially raise cattle does have a massive impact on the environment.
Yeah. So a lot of the animals,
not just for climate change, but it also segments off land that could be used for housing.
Right.
So not
exactly.
only is it polluting the environment, but we're also cutting all of this space out that could be used for housing.
Yeah. So we cut down a lot of the rainforests to build or to farm crops to feed to the animals. So the ratio of calories that we put into the animals to the calories we get out is like 10 to 1. So it's not efficient, right? So
Especially because they tend to eat more than things.
Yeah, they eat. They're using that energy when they're living, and then we kill them and we take what they have left. But they ate 10 times like the plants. So if we just ate those plants directly, we're cutting all that right out from the middle. So it's way more efficient.
Yes.
And we would save a lot more land. We would be able to grow plants. So if the whole world went vegan, which wouldn't happen overnight,
right?
But in theory, we would make the whole supply chain more efficient to the point where we would end world hunger. We'd have enough food to feed everyone on the planet, and actually like billions more than are on the planet now if everyone were to eat plants. And we'd have a lot more space too, and it would help the wild animals because they would have more room. It would, so pretty much all those things. You know, you would be if you changed right now, you would have a positive impact on all that stuff. And if you changed today and live vegan for 1 year, you would save around 200 animals a year. So even if you think that you changing won't have an impact on the whole industry, it's kind of like voting. Like, I don't know if you vote or not, but you know, there's 350 million people in the country or whatever. Your one single vote doesn't matter that much, but like if everyone thought that way, nobody would vote. You know what I mean? It's like, even though it doesn't matter that much, we still do it because we have a say and we have an obligation to try to do what's right. And yeah, I think we should consider the animals like you're doing. Like,
I think it should be an individual choice. I think part of the problem, or a bigger part of the problem, is that we aren't given that choice. And what I mean by that is, yes, you have a choice when you go to the the supermarket, do you want to get grain, whatever.
Yeah.
Sure, but it's not a real choice. It's being catered and presented in a way that is meant to influence you to get certain products. How grocery stores are designed specifically because if you go in hungry, the stuff you need is in different parts of the store, and you have to pass everything else in order to get them.
Right, yeah.
We don't really have a choice as well because of financial cost, especially with some of the alternatives.
Right.
Because they're not produced on an industrial scale, they tend to be more expensive.
Yeah, specifically like the mock meats, like the meat alternatives. You're dead on with that. Some of those are more expensive. But when you look at like the grains and legumes, beans, and rice kind of thing,
nuts and rice are
nuts and seeds are mid-price. Nuts are a little bit more expensive, but like the grains and the legumes, they're generally cheaper. But like that's what I mainly eat, a lot of nuts and seeds, and I don't eat as much of the grains, but
I dabble in meat. I mean, if I have the opportunity to eat meat, I'll absolutely eat it. But for the most part, because of health issues, my dietary needs have changed a lot of things. So I do eat a lot of grains. I do eat a lot of rice, a lot of soup, and stuff like that. And
instead of putting chicken and stuff in your rice bowls, you can replace it with like tofu or tempeh.
Chicken's probably the meat I consume the most.
Yeah. They're the most oppressed animal.
Or turkey.
Yeah.
In many cases, my meat is substituted for turkey because red meat is red meat.
Right.
And in most cases, there's no difference in taste. I'd say 99% of the time there's no difference between turkey and beef. Not to say that turkeys are not being treated poorly as well, because they absolutely are.
There's actually less laws for birds, I think, in the animal agriculture industry than like pigs and other animals.
Especially if you look at the way cows and pigs are treated on farms in comparison to what you see when you look at a chicken farm.
But even those, it doesn't stop them from breaking all those rules, which is crazy.
No, because if the penalty is a fine, it's only a for people. Like when they all go to the slaughterhouse, it's all going to be the same image because they're trying to get the crew as quickly as possible. But at least as far as
even organic and free range pasture, they all go to the same slaughterhouses.
Yeah, they all go to the same slaughterhouse. Maybe like a different. Like you're not getting industrially shoved through. Like you're still.
I mean, if they go to that slaughterhouse, it's the same for all those animals that go there. Sometimes they go to smaller butchers or whatever, but like
the end
they're still just killing the animal.
The end result is the same. The end is the same, but how you get there changes, which does matter.
So you said it's more or not as immoral if you treat them better during their life. But if you have an alternative, if you have three options, right? Because you're kind of considering two options, either factory farming or like treating them better, more humanely, ethically farming.
And if there is
the third alternative is just plants, right?
Yes.
And not killing any animals. So do you think that's the best morally?
I think the best decision morally is people having the ability to choose. So
even if there's a victim that suffered at the end of that decision, you don't think it matters to consider them?
I think it matters when or if the level of sentience is the same. For example.
So like where do you draw the line? Because like I draw the line at sentience. Because they can feel it. So they have a brain, they have a central nervous system, and that is what makes them conscious and sentient.
Conscious and alive.
Like, to that extent, whatever extent it is for them.
Fair.
But like,
absolutely fair.
Why would you move the line like further up, like past fish, past chicken? Like, what would be that difference? Just the level of sentience? But then it goes to like
the level of sentience.
What about people that aren't as sentient, or children? Because children, they're moral patients because they can act immorally and not really know.
Correct.
Just like an animal, right? So we can't really hold them accountable.
However, it's not the current level of sentience doesn't matter as much. It is this is going to be something Gobbles. It's the unrealized potential. So, in the case of a child, or a woman's pregnant, no, in the case of a child, because I don't consider a fetus a person, once that child is born, they don't have the functions to take care of themselves. They're not physically incapable of moving, feeding, taking care of themselves.
Right.
But that doesn't make it not sentient.
Right.
However, the end potential for that infant is like you or me or a standard member, that there could be intellectual disabilities or handicaps that prevent them from reaching that potential.
Right.
But that potential was still there.
Okay, I understand what you're saying.
Whereas in the case of an animal, as of now, not saying it can't change in the future,
yeah,
but as of now, there is a ceiling that they've reached that they can't go over. Similar to humans in that regard, there is a ceiling we haven't found a way to go past yet.
So, like, just because we think that animal is most efficiently used for that process for us, like, how does that justify treating like a chicken better than a dog? Because if we farm dogs, we could get more meat off of a dog than a chicken.
I think the reason for that isn't necessarily one that we came to now. Like, that's not
does that mean that it has to stay the same?
No, absolutely not.
Right.
It is originally, it was a natural decision. Training and living the way we did thousands of years ago, it made more sense to have a dog as a companion as opposed to, say, a chicken.
Right.
Now, that's not to say that I think dogs are somehow different than chickens. I think the difference comes in levels of sentience. So, for example, let's use fish.
Right.
If fish and dogs are the same level of sentience, they should be treated the same. It doesn't matter if one's in the ocean or one's on land. Regardless, they should be treated the same.
Like a pig and a dog, they're pretty relevant. Yeah.
Because I know pigs are particularly intelligent. Yeah, they should be treated the same.
Yeah.
So,
do you eat pigs?
I do.
So are you going to stop eating pigs from now on?
Not necessarily. However, if somebody offered me dog, I wouldn't turn that down.
You'd consider it,
I would consider
so
it.
I respect that you are, like, consistent, in what you're trying to be as consistent as you can.
Being consistent is important because otherwise, you're absolutely right about treating a pig differently than I'm treating a dog, but they're at that same baseline.
Yeah.
I'm kind of elevating that one is more important than the other when they're both.
Yes.
If they're the same, they should be treated the same.
Right.
Similar to people. If people are the same, they should be treated the same. Similar with that doesn't necessarily mean they should be treated poorly.
Yeah.
Because there is a difference between treating people the same and treating people poorly.
Right.
You can do both. They're not mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
People should not be treated poorly. Animals should not be treated poorly just because they're different or a lower level of sentience.
Right.
Animals still should be able to live.
Yeah.
However, I'm not opposed to eating animals, hunting animals, whatever. I'm opposed to.
Does that seem a little hypocritical there? Like,
it absolutely is.
Yeah.
But I'm opposed to the abuse of those animals.
Yeah.
Because I think there is a difference between me going and hunting a wild turkey versus a turkey that has been trapped on a farm, had its wings clipped so it can't fly or function properly, and is only being grown for the purpose of being killed and consumed.
Yeah.
Those are two very different things, even if the end result is me eating a turkey. How that turkey was treated up until the point it's consumed is vastly different.
Yeah. So I had a pet turkey when I was younger, and they're really cool creatures.
Nice.
Like, when I would hang out with my friends like this outside, she would come up and just like stand in the circle with us and stuff. I could pet her, I could pick her up and like hold her.
I do think that more animals should be legally considered pets.
If you found out that your turkey was coming from the factory farm that's actually local, would you stop eating turkey? Because most of the turkeys that are killed around here are killed in New Oxford. There's a plant out there that they kill like 8,000 turkeys a day in one building. And there was an investigation there last year or the year before, where they actually charged almost a dozen people with over 150 charges of like animal abuse and things like that, because you could find the videos online, but they would, to move the turkeys from one area to another, they'd like grab them by their necks and throw them, or they'd kick them and like hit them with stuff. And
whatever's going to get them to move fastest, regardless of.
Yeah, they were doing all sorts of messed up things. That was local. It was one of the biggest investigations in the country, and it was like a couple minutes from here. And it's a turkey slaughterhouse.
That's not a surprise to me.
Yeah.
I feel like, not that cattle and pig farms don't have their own levels of abuses, I feel like birds tend to get abused the most because they are one of the higher consumed.
Yeah, chickens are like way up there.
Chickens with, because there were a couple of places I had lived or ended up being, like I was in the hospital for a while, and there were chicken farms all over that area, and it's, I mean, the smell, it travels far and is absolutely atrocious. But even videos comparing cattle farms versus chicken farms, where you have so many chickens, they literally can't move. I think cattle farms even have cattle farms and pork. Like there are farms that have similar conditions, but it's not as universal as I feel the pork farms have been.
Josh.
So some of the stats, I don't know if I'm exact on them, but I think around 90% of the animals in the U.S. are factory farmed. So they're in cages where they can't turn around, they can't move.
Yeah, I believe it.
This is a picture here of cage-free chickens. They're just in a big shed, crammed in there so tight. They're not in a cage, but there's so many in there they can't really move. So yeah, it's pretty horrific. A lot of those labels, they're just labels to make us feel better about eating those products.
Yes, absolutely.
Grass-fed cows, you think they're like out in the pasture eating the grass? They just cut the grass and bring them in and feed them inside in their little cages that they can't move in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
it's similar to
those industries are lying because they make money at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's similar to the marketing of something as sugar-free, but the substitutes they're putting in there to give it the same effect as sugar is worse than the sugar itself.
Right.
I feel the problem ultimately comes back to money and profit.
Yeah.
Because there is a monetary benefit to do this, it's done. If there was another way that was more profitable to do it, if it was more profitable for them to ethically treat animals, raise them, and harvest them, they 100% would, because it earns them the most money.
Yeah. So there's new associations, groups that are helping farmers transition from animal products to plants. And there are ways to make more money. So one guy I know, he's changing chicken farms into mushroom farms, and it's way more better for the planet. You don't have all the waste from the chickens.
I feel like they also have similar conditions.
Yeah.
You can grow the mushrooms the same way you would keep chickens.
Exactly. And then growing the mushrooms, they can actually make more money doing that. But the big industries, for them to change and do that, it might cost too much money to just transition. So that's the biggest step.
It would cost them an extensive amount of money to transition over for an unknown outcome.
Yeah, you don't know how long they'd have to be doing the new thing before they would like break even or whatever.
Before they would break
it's
even.
It's too long of a timeline for the people that are in charge to make that decision.
Or if transitioning over would result in that happening. Because it's nice to say, if we just switch them all over, the result of it being better for the planet is factual. Whether people want that or think that's the best course of action is something different.
Yeah.
Now, if we can convince everybody that's the right thing to do, and people have the informed choice to go that way,
right?
Cool.
Yeah.
More power to it. But
that's why I'm out here.
Yeah.
Trying to educate people and get them to do their own research into it, and don't take those other industries' marketing schemes for what it is, because like you said, at the end of the day, the only thing in it for them is money and more profits, and they try to hide what they're actually doing. So if we're responsible for ourselves, we can make changes, and if enough people, individuals, make changes, then it puts more pressure on those industries. Yeah. So since I've only been vegan for a year now, and in the past year, just going into my grocery store and buying all the vegan products, almost every time I go in there now, there's a new product in there, and it's really cool. And some of them suck and they're really bad, and it's like, oh, I'm not gonna get that one again. But then I'll try the same thing, a different brand, and it's freaking awesome. So if you
how you would do it with any
exactly. Even certain cuts of meat, like you might like that certain cut of meat from that butcher over that butcher, or buying it from the store or whatever. But so it's the same thing with plants.
The way they store it, the way they handle it, all of that stuff.
Yeah. So always give like some of those plant products a second chance, or like try different brands, taste test things. It's fun to do that too. I like doing that. So
provided you have the extra income to be able to.
Yeah, so there's a little bit more information here if you want. This is my channel. You can watch back our conversation or see other conversations like that. If you want to take a picture of this, you can check out some other films that show you what happens to the animals. We'll give you some information on health and living vegan and religion. And then Challenge 22 will hook you up with a nutritionist, give you recipes and stuff every single day, and help you live vegan for 22 days, because that's what changes a habit, right?
Yeah.
So if you want to live vegan and align your actions with how you say you kind of want to respect animals, all the same. So living vegan is the best way to do that. So if you're not living vegan and you're buying animal products, then even if it's ethical farming, there's still exploitation in that at the end of the day. So so you can take a picture of that and check some of those things out, or if you want to grab any of them, you can take any of that stuff with you. But I'm out here talking to individuals because I think, like I said, we can all make a difference ourselves, but we also can
impact the people around us.
Yeah, impact the people around us, and we can try to impact the corporations. The Humane League, that's what they do. So if you do decide that you want to live vegan and help support the animals, you don't have to come out and talk to people like I am. But you can join the Humane League and just send emails to corporations, and you try to put pressure on the corporations to bring in more plant products and less animal products. So that's, if you want to be a little bit active, that's kind of a cool way to do it. But yeah, just do some more research for yourself. You seem like a really smart, open-minded person. So I don't have a lot of good conversations like this. So I really appreciate you stopping and talking to me.
Change.
Yeah, exactly. Totally agree.
Based on new information, because if you can't, then it's done that way.
Yeah. Just do your own research, and you're local, right? You said you're from Gettysburg, so do your own research. I'm trying to be here like a couple times a week. I don't have a set schedule, but if you ever do some research and you want to talk again, come back and either tell me that you're vegan or come back with like an argument, and we can like debate. And
I think
I'm always open to learning new things too. I'm not saying I'm 100% right on anything. So
for me, the way it affects me personally, I don't know if I could ever change to be vegan.
Yeah,
that's me.
That's what I thought too.
But I also don't have a problem consuming vegan products. In some cases, there's no taste difference, and if it's priced similarly, I do that.
Yeah.
And I don't have a problem with other people.
Yeah.
The only issue I have is it becomes not a choice, but a forced.
Right. So, like,
forced decision.
Do you think that we're forcing those animals into those slaughterhouses?
I think we're forcing them into those slaughterhouses 100%. But I also don't think it's the same as if I were to force a human into a slaughterhouse, force a cow, a pig, a dog, a fish through. There's levels of whether there's a point where an action is okay, or maybe not okay, but defensible, and then there's a point where it's now unacceptable.
I think it might be more defensible, but I still think it's unjustifiable.
And that is completely fair.
Again, I go back to relating it to like a person that has the same mental capacity as a fish. They might live their whole life like that. Mm-hmm. Does that mean that we should be able to do whatever we want to them? Like, probably not, right? Yeah. So, but
because they are a person.
Just because other people can have more capacity than them, it's kind of just an arbitrary line you're kind of drawing there.
Potential is where my line is strong.
Yeah.
Because even though a person has an intellectual disability or isn't able to function, say, you or me, or somebody who's considered a genius and is able to do all kinds of life-changing things, that potential does matter. Granted, humans have a giant bandwidth of that, anywhere from somebody being catatonic versus somebody giga-braining everything.
Sure. But we shouldn't treat them any differently.
No, we shouldn't treat anything within that band shouldn't be treated differently. Similar to an animal. If animals are in this same band, they should all be treated the same.
Yeah, well, but so that would include fish and chicken and everything, because people could have the capacity of a fish all the way up to the smartest human. So we could potentially be anywhere in that range. So we should respect fish and chicken based on what you're saying. So it's like you're really close.
It's not the same because a human has that potential range. A fish has the range of a fish. A cow has the range of a cow. A pig has the range of a pig.
But the bottom end of the range of a person could be a fish. Like, if they literally just can't do anything, they can't, like, they're vegetable or whatever, literally, like, that's what one of the derogatory words for it.
Their actions might be the same. The cognition isn't necessarily the same. I might be able to, for example, I may end up in an accident that makes me in your words, have the capabilities of a fish. And sure, I may only be able to function on a base level of a fish, but my cognition and ability to see is also that as it's still that of a human. Whether I can interact with the world on the same level as, say, you the way you are now versus me living as a fish, whether and part of this is also expression, just because somebody can't express something doesn't necessarily mean it's not that same brain function isn't there. Now,
right, like I don't know how conscious you are, you don't know how conscious I am.
Right.
Like,
now, I am open to studying animals more and finding that stuff out, because if we do find out differences, then 100% they should be treated according to whatever the most current information we have about them are.
Yeah.
And if animals, for whatever reason, end up, because there are animals that do have social hierarchies and form communities.
Yeah.
Kind of similar.
Like cows.
Yeah, kind of similar to what humans have. Not quite.
Yeah.
It's like they're almost there. They're just missing a couple of steps.
So one thing that I like to ask people is, in the future, and it could be pretty close in our future, with all this AI advancement, what if there's a way that we're able to talk to animals? Do you think that would change things?
Yes.
Like, do you think, like, I think that could be something that could help the world go vegan, like, almost overnight. Like,
absolutely.
Not instantly, but it would really speed things up.
If there becomes a means with which to communicate with anything, not just animals, plants, whatever,
Sure.
communicate with them on the same level as I'm communicating with you, that suddenly changes everything at that point that we thought we understood, because we are now able to communicate with them.
Yeah.
And once you're able to communicate, however that may be, that becomes a massive shift. So for whatever reason, we're able to now have conversations with cows.
Yeah.
It's.
What do you think they would say? Like why are you doing? Like, what did you think?
Watching a slaughterhouse probably don't look fun.
Yeah. Like they would. Like one thing that I heard, and it really like stuck with me, was if animals formed a religion, a human would be like the devil would be in the form of a human. Like, like that's literally like hell on earth. Like, imagine the worst thing that you could possibly like do to somebody. It would probably be like putting them through a factory farm and like slaughterhouse. Like, what could you do that would be worse to a person than like lock them in a little cage where they couldn't move around, sexually exploit them, steal their baby, like in the dairy industry, or like, pump them full of hormones so they grow bigger and they can't walk and like their legs break like chickens, and like pigs. Just crazy stuff. Like pigs
get so big they can't move.
In factory farms, pigs are so tightly confined and they start eating each other, right? They'll like eat each other's tails and stuff because that's what's easy for them. So to stop them from eating each other's tails, guess what they do? They cut the tails off, and they clip out the pig's teeth, and they don't use any anesthesia or anything like that. So they're screaming and crying, and they're just like, clip, next one, clip, next one, clip. Like, it's horrific. It's torture.
No,
like,
that is absolutely.
But that's legal because it's exempt, because it's part of the standard procedure. So it's not abuse. But like, it's clearly abuse. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it's because of the arbitrary classification.
Somebody decided that we can forget the morality aspect because it needs to be more efficient.
This is a pet. This is a wild animal. This is livestock or fit for consumption.
Another thing that I like to just make more aware to people, it's like, I don't know, like you're a random stranger, right? I don't know that guy. I don't know those people. my dog means more to me than a stranger on the street, right? So, but that doesn't mean that I would support oppressing anyone. You know
Right.
what I mean? So it's like I just feel the same with animals. Like,
there's a base level. You feel there's a difference, but there is a point where it's like I feel this way regardless of what they are. In the case of animals, for you, it sounds like at a certain point, everything above that is all I wouldn't treat them. I might not care about them the same way as my dog, but I'm also not going to
treat them poorly.
I'm not going to treat them poorly or go out of my way
that was like one of your said.
Hurt them or abuse them. Because we
can just eat plants.
Yeah, we could absolutely could.
Yeah.
Granted, I love meat.
Right.
If I can get a substitute for meat that is similar cost, tastes about as close as you can get, because there's always going to be a slight difference.
Yeah. But most of it's seasonings and sauces, So
I take it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You'd always choose that alternative. Yeah.
Because meat's.
So meat's actually only as cheap as it is because we pay for it with our taxes too. So if you actually were to see the real price of it, it would be a lot higher.
It's the same with corn. We do the same thing with corn. How much we subsidize farming.
We need to. It's like $40 billion for animals, and it's like 20 million or something for plants. It's like crazy difference.
I think corn is the only plant that is differently subsidized because we literally put it in everything.
Yeah. Well, most of it goes to the animals too.
Not just animal food, but
you're right.
Corn syrup, which is in literally everything in this country.
Yep. Corn and soybeans, they're like the two biggest things. But most of it goes to the animals. Yeah. So, but we can eat both of them.
Cheap to farm, and you get so much of it. It's cheap to use as food because of how much you get from a single plant. Yeah,
and soybeans actually good for you. Like some people say, like there's things in it, the estrogen or whatever in soybeans is bad for you. It's actually not. The estrogen, the hormones that's in dairy is way worse than soybeans. And
too much of it.
The estrogen in soybeans actually will protect you from the estrogen in dairy. So if you do drink milk and stuff, you probably should also eat soy because it will actually help you if you're worried about like the hormones and stuff like that. So
at this point, butter is the only dairy I actually consume.
Yeah, there's a lot of good vegan butters too.
And even then, I don't consume that much.
But yeah, you should probably minimize that because of the saturated fat from a health aspect.
Yeah, but the only time I use butter is if it's required for cooking something. Other than that, I don't do dairy because of my own health issues.
Right. Yeah. But now you can also say it's for the cows because you want to respect them.
A lot of it.
There are some good mushroom steaks and stuff like that too. So
it's funny because it all ultimately comes back to profit.
Right.
Regardless, leaving aside the moral argument, which is important, but I still feel the moral argument is much.
I think it's the most important if you really look at it holistically.
Fair. I think the moral argument is much less important than the fact that it's a financial aspect.
Right. That's why it got out of control.
I could morally, theoretically convince somebody that it's wrong. And I'm sure there are people at the executive level who probably think it's wrong, but because it makes them money, that's the more important thing.
Yeah.
And until that changes, I don't think the moral argument is going to be enough to cause that shift. The shift won't start on a grand level until the financial situation changes.
Right. So I agree, and I think we can help support that. So if we start putting our money there instead of the animal products, it'll help that. So Yeah, I'm not
And
sure.
not that what you do individually doesn't help.
Yeah.
It's something that, in addition to you, need to, others need to do the same.
Right.
And then whether that choice is feasible, because especially with some things, the cost it's not there yet.
Yeah. So just do a little bit more research on it. For you, if you look at Challenge 22, like I said, they'll hook you up with a nutritionist. It'll help you stay within your budget too.
Right.
So it's definitely a good resource. So yeah, I mean, it's just like when you eat animal products, you got to make sure you're budgeting everything right, and it's harder when you go out to eat sometimes. They don't, a lot of places don't have vegan options, but you can just tell them, if you ask them if they can make it vegan, maybe they might leave one or two things out. But here, if you go down that street to Food 101, they have a vegan menu.
Oh, nice.
So you have to ask for it.
Yeah,
but
makes sense.
they'll give you the vegan menu. There's a whole bunch of different options on there. It's all really great stuff.
I think one of the things that also hurts vegan products that, if they change, would benefit more people, especially with lower incomes, is it's a lot harder to find bulk for vegan products. So
Sure,
if I go, Kenny's is close by, so if I go to Kenny's and I go to the section that has grass-fed, vegan, organic, what have you, I'm getting a small box, maybe 4 to 6 patties. I get a plant-based. Whereas I go right next door, around the corner to the beef section, I can buy a 20-pack set for maybe a couple dollars more than the vegan option, but I'm getting so much more that it's just not feasible to do the other option. And I think if they can find a way to get bulk purchases, maybe it's $1 or $2, maybe it's $3 more than a few purchase. It's a much more tempting way to sway lower income people over, because a lot of them, of course, do buy it in bulk.
So the best way to get your protein, mainly on a plant-based diet, really cheap. The cheapest way is with like beans. That's what most people recommend. But beans, tofu, they're on the lower end in cost. But the cheapest, I think, is seitan. So it's gluten, vital wheat gluten. You can buy that directly at the grocery store. I don't know if they have it at Kenny's. Kenny's is pretty limited in vegan options, but you might be able to get it down there. It's just vital wheat gluten, and you just mix it with you can just mix it with water and like steam it, and it makes like a little loaf. But it's just like straight protein. So you can make it with like a vegetable broth and different seasonings and spices if you want to make it taste different. But you can make it cheaply with just that and water. And then once you steam it into a loaf, you can cut it down to smaller pieces and like pan fry it or whatever, cook it in like some butter or something like that, and it'll taste a little bit better. But it's cheaper than if you went out and you were buying meat. So there are ways to do it, but you're obviously limiting your options.
You're limited based on your area. So.
Yeah. So, but most of us shop at a grocery store, and most grocery stores do have some alternatives.
Yeah, there's at least some, even if they don't necessarily have more of a selection.
Yeah. So, thank you for talking to me. What was your name? Matt. Yeah, I'm Jake. It's really nice to meet you. I hope you make some changes. I got maybe like 1 or 2 more quick questions.
Sure.
So, is there anything that what could I say to you right now that would make you want to change instantly? Is there anything
that would make me switch today or tomorrow to be vegan? It would have to be 2 things in concert. It would be the financial argument and then the taste argument.
Right.
Where if it is financially feasible for me to do, and the taste won't change, like taste or texture won't change too much, then that's an easy one. That's an easy answer.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of anything else.
So that's like, when I really think about it, those are the two reasons that people come up with always, like, to eat animal products. It's always taste and convenience. That's it. So, like, and that cost could be in that convenience.
Yeah.
So I think if we can, and if you look at those things, they're kind of selfish. You know what I mean?
Oh, no, absolutely.
Those two things that we're deciding on are just considering us. It's not considering the animal at all. So
sure, but I also don't think being selfish is inherently wrong.
Yeah, to an extent, I agree with that.
Yeah. Obviously, there's like
when it involves a victim, like
there's a level of selfishness where it's like, okay, come on, like factory farming.
Yeah, exactly. Just
like there's a point where the selfishness stops going from this only affects me to this is now affecting more and more people.
Yeah,
a lot more people.
So if you wanted to eat just from ethical farms, also, the last chicken that I ate, I went to a pasture-raised chicken farm. I toured it. I met the lady, and I met the chickens, and I walked in the field. I saw the field. She moves the pen that they're in down every day, so they got fresh grass and bugs, and it was really nice.
And you don't want them to stay in the same spot because of the land.
Yeah. So then I went down into the slaughter room where they kill them, and it was like this is the cone that they put them in. Their head sticks out of the bottom, and they cut their heads off, and they bleed out into the drain on the floor. And then they have like a washing machine that they put them in. It takes all their feathers off and stuff. And then like the freezer, they just wrap them up, put them in the freezer, and that's just being in there. It felt like you could feel like the evil in that place. You could smell the blood, even though they didn't even like slaughter anything recently. It was like off season, like they were just starting.
Yeah.
But you could smell it in there. It was just kind of, and it was clean, but it just felt gross.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And then, and the chicken, whole chicken, $30.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
That's that much more expensive to do that because you have less products.
Yeah.
Because you have less product, you have to upcharge more to make it viable.
Yeah, so when I would go to the grocery store,
not even superbly profitable, just to like make barely break through.
Yeah, just for her to like keep doing it, like kind of thing. But yeah, that was the last chicken I had. But before that, I would go get organic chicken at the grocery store for like $6.
Yeah.
So it was like, but yeah, I was like, I don't want to do that anymore. I'm gonna go get pasture raised.
And then
it's $30. It's like I can't afford $30 chicken. That's crazy. Nobody could do that. So yeah, so I'm like, I'd just rather not eat chicken anymore. That was that decision.
Completely fair.
So yeah, I mean, it's just do your own research in it and think about it. And my last question is, how many more animals need to be oppressed for you before you make a change? Can you give me a number? How many? What does your heart tell you?
I don't think there is a number. Because there is, unfortunately, there is no number of oppressed animals that would cause me to change my thoughts as far as consumption.
Yeah.
For me, the financial argument, while more selfish, is the most important factor.
Yeah.
Because, and I mean, this is gross, but unfortunately, it's where we are right now. Changing or going with the moral argument will have less impact on the financial. Not necessarily have the same impact on the financial. That's probably the best way to phrase it. However, changing the financial aspect of it will immediately allow the moral argument to start mattering a bit more. Because if it's the same, equivalently the same to not abuse and slaughter animals as
Right.
it is to abuse and slaughter animals. Most people are not going to abuse and slaughter animals.
Right, exactly.
But if it's like, if it's more cost effective to do it that way, people are 100% going to think about themselves and their local group over other people, which isn't wrong. There's no moral right or wrong there.
Yeah.
It's more about what's going to result in the best outcome for the most number of people.
Right.
Which, right now, in this present moment, I would say is the factory farming, as fucked up as it is.
Yeah.
However,
it's at the expense of the animals, though,
and
right?
it's at the expense of the animals. However, should that change?
Yeah. I think it was necessary, at a time, but
yeah, I
think it should change.
Industrial farming was ever necessary.
Yeah. I'm not saying that. I mean just farming in general when it first started, or hunting. When we needed to hunt animals, obviously there were times where it was more necessary than now.
I still think hunting is okay regardless. Even if we were to go...
I think it's not as bad.
Yeah, but I think if
it's on that bad side, I think.
If we remove factory farming, let's say we all go vegan.
Yeah.
No more farm-raised animals. It's
you're gonna say overpopulation.
No.
No, okay.
Farms now just do plants. All farms are now plant-based.
Okay.
There are still going to be reasons why people want to hunt. Whether it's the...
Even if we make a law about it.
Like killing, or it's... I like the art of stalking something, or... Hell, I just can't get the taste of this.
Yeah, exactly.
Anything else.
Yep, like prohibition.
Yeah.
And alcohol.
Yeah. Just because you say somebody can't do something doesn't mean they're not going to do it, especially if it's the cost-benefit analysis is worth it.
So another thing I like to compare that to is racism. We're like slavery and racism, they kind of went together. We abolished slavery. Like, we know morally,
we abolished it on paper.
All of us, we know it's not good to be racist.
Even then, we didn't completely abolish slavery.
Well, that's it could be a whole nother discussion.
Yeah.
But to the animals, like, we know that it's wrong to be racist, but it didn't eliminate racism. Some people are still going to be racist. So even if we eliminate slaughterhouses,
the moral argument doesn't sway them there.
Yeah.
That's another case of, I can explain to you 50 ways from Sunday how being racist is incredibly fucked up and wrong.
Yeah.
But if you're not going to be swayed by the moral argument, nothing I say is going to change that. The only thing that's going to change that is if it impacts you. If you being racist personally impacts you.
Right.
Now we seem to be backpedaling in the opposite direction, where the normal mechanisms to prevent that, social ostracization and whatnot, don't really seem to be working anymore, because now you can be racist, and if you get pushback, set up a GoFundMe, make a video, get hundreds of thousands of dollars. Moral arguments are good, but I feel like they're a bit of a double-edged sword, because while you may be correct morally, and what you are correct what they're doing wrong, there is a good portion of it that the moral argument is for a sense of self-superiority.
Right.
Where
human supremacy.
Not human supremacy, more that because I am making this argument, I am better than you. So, for the case of veganism, there are vegans who, with the argument they're making, yes, they're making a correct argument. The exploitation of animals is generally a bad thing, but they're not making it for that reason primarily. It's more because I don't believe in the exploitation of animals, and you do, I am morally superior to you.
So
and that's not
exactly. I see why you say that.
There are a portion that do.
Yeah. So
Not
I
all.
think it's kind of the opposite way around, though. I think meat is more of a delicacy, and I think that people that eat meat, eating meat is more of a privilege than not. If you look at some of the poorest like people in the world, they have to survive off of plants generally.
Plants, beans, whatever they can get in vast quantities for as low cost, which usually are rice.
Yeah, rice and beans and the wheat.
Beans,
it can be the cheapest.
Yes.
So it can be. But then it goes back to the taste.
It goes back to taste, and it also goes back to location.
Yeah.
Like here.
But most people
have
a grocery store that they have the alternatives.
Yes,
So,
I would agree with that, especially in
and you do too, right?
chain stores. Yeah, I know Giant and
Giant has more options, I think.
Giant has more options, absolutely,
but
than Kenny's, but that part of that also just comes from being a bigger store and being chain owned versus family owned.
Yeah. I thought about sending Kenny's emails, kind of like what they do to Giant, and just talking to them and say, hey, what would it take for you to get more plant products in, and just kind of see what they say.
I'm gonna hazard a guess.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say grocery stores already tend to run on margins, more so with family owned than in the case of Giant. It's similar to how Walmart operates, where it's able to purchase at such a large bulk, they can afford to sell some things for cheaper just to push competitors out.
Yeah.
That's why I try not to shop at Walmart unless I absolutely have to.
Yeah, exactly. Taking it from all the other people.
Limited in choices.
Yeah.
And there are portions of this country that do have food deserts. Where you do not have an option.
Right.
And these options don't exist. And
but they're really small and rare, so. But I understand.
Even in dense areas, they'll have them too, because it's entirely dependent on how many chains are there.
Yeah.
And how many, a lot of places just pull out or carve little fiefdoms for themselves where they're the predominant chain there. Yeah. Walmart's kind of just spread everywhere like a plague, but
I'm not saying you have to live off of rice and beans, but you can basically find that everywhere. So
you can find rice and beans everywhere.
Even in the food deserts, if you have to eat just rice and beans while you're there on vacation or whatever, maybe.
Price will vary, but in food deserts, I think you can always find rice and beans. However, just rice and beans is also not enough. And in those instances, yes, frozen vegetables are good, and they are vegetables, but they're not the same as fresh. And
so there's actually some studies that show some fresh or frozen vegetables are actually better than fresh.
Yes. Those particular instances are when the frozen vegetables are frozen immediately. If they harvest, get rid of whatever is not good and immediately freeze it, it still locks in where it was at that time, as opposed to not freezing it, and depending on how far the transit is from farm to grocery store to table, you're getting an inferior product by going fresh.
Yeah, exactly.
In an area like this, or just South Central PA in general, probably not as much of a transit time, but if you live in New York City, you're going out there for fresh fruit, vegetables, and whatnot to get to you. It depends just really how close you are to farmland, or in the case of here, the farmers markets where you can just buy directly from them. There are some things that I think you and I are just going to fundamentally disagree on, which is fine.
Yeah. Yeah, just
Like,
do more research on some of those things, because you had the same opinions that I had until I looked into them more. So just the fact that you're here and you're talking to me about it, that tells me that you're willing to change.
I don't see, in an instant, there are some instances I think talking doesn't serve a purpose, because something's not gonna shift, and talking, even if I talk longer, it's not gonna shift. Yeah. I don't want to change you from your belief system, because, or am I trying to convince you otherwise, because what you're doing is your choice.
Yeah.
Fine.
And I don't really want to. I don't want to convince you either, even though, like, I kind of do. I do want to convince you. I do think you're doing something wrong if you're supporting those industries, but I'm not going to tell you that you have to change because I said so. I want you to look into it for yourself, talk to yourself about it, and see if you're okay with supporting
in that
animal abuse, essentially. Yeah, like, you said you were against it, but then you kind of support it. So, like, are you really okay with that? Like, now that you're more aware of it, and so that's where I got to, and I was like, why am I not vegan? Like, why am I not vegan? And I really thought about it, and I thought about it, and I thought about it, and I'm like, there's no reason for me to not be vegan, because I feel like I've always kind of been like that. Like, I always, wanted to respect animals. I see animals as individuals, not as, not all chickens are the same, not all cows are the same, not all pigs are the same. So we shouldn't treat them like that, like that's. I feel like most people kind of feel like that too, and they just don't know, and they don't think about the things that we're talking about. So
I would say, and this is just me bullshitting here, because I don't have data that would suggest something for or against it.
Sure.
I would say that they don't until a name is presented. Once something is named, like, we get those Sarah McLachlan SPCA videos all the time, and people will feel sad about the puppies going through whatever.
Yeah.
But until it has a name,
right?
You can show a lot of people for instance, this is cage-free
the chickens and stuff. Yeah.
Looks bad. It is bad.
Yeah.
Until they have names or are individualized, they're just approved.
Right.
And once they have those individual names, people will tend to care more about.
Yeah. I agree.
Because upon naming it, you've now formed an attachment to whatever that is, whatever it is, being animal, even objects. If you assign a name to it, you grow more attached.
Even plants. People have house plants in their house. They love their plants just as much as some of their pets. You know what I mean? It's like they like that plant more than they like their neighbor's dog. Like, I understand that. But
and in some ways,
at the same time, it doesn't mean that it's okay to disrespect any other life, really. So, but yeah, I totally agree.
And I mean, some of that, I think, between you and I are going to be just a fundamental disagreement, and that's completely fine.
Yeah. Just look into the science.
Yeah.
And try to justify, try to actually justify the things that you participate in, because you're responsible for the actions that happen, down the road. So
I think ultimately, and it is something I have thought about before, for the moment, I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
However, I'm not opposed to that changing.
Yeah, that's great.
Because, yes, right now, this might be the option, or what I'm okay with, or what works best for me personally. However, should that change, not changing with that is just, I don't think intellectually dishonest is the word, but inconsistent is probably the better term for it. Because
it's hypocritical.
If I'm doing it because this is the best option for me right now, and something else appears that becomes a better option, not taking it is a sign of just lack of care, and just
that's the best thing. When you become vegan, you stop being a hypocrite. You know, if that's how you feel, like I do, then that was the main thing for me, because I don't like hypocrites. Like there's some other people that I worked with that were really hypocritical on things, and I was like, and I would notice that, and I'd be like, man, that's like, I don't like that. And then when I just realized that I was doing the same kind of thing when I eat animals, I was like, yeah, I need to stop. So
I think part of that is also just being human.
Right. Yeah.
Being a hypocrite, not necessarily anything else. Because
but it's not a good thing normally, right? Like if you realize you're being hypocritical on something, then you would think like you would want to change and align that, right?
It's not a good or a bad thing. I think it is just a thing.
Yeah.
And it assigns good or bad based on what your own moral relativism and all that, because that does matter, and there are some things that are important to consider in that fashion. Right. But depending on a person, whether being a hypocrite is good or a bad thing really depends on, I guess, scope, area of impact. Like if I think something hypocritical, don't say it, don't act on it, don't let it become a thing that impacts somebody other than me.
Sure.
I wouldn't necessarily. Yes, it might be a bad thing, but it's not a bad thing. It's only affecting me personally.
Right. I understand that. Like, it's not something that you're doing on purpose that's bad. It's just something that, you know, you're kind of doing by accident. I mean, that's like what it is.
Some of it is learned.
So,
it can be changed.
And that's, I'm not here judging people, because I did the same thing. I ate animal products and I supported those industries for a long time. But I think that people just need to, like, look at themselves a little bit more, you know? Like,
self-reflection is always good. And necessary.
Yeah.
As much as people do it.
Yeah. So it was Mike, right?
Matt.
Oh, I was close. Yeah, it was nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you. Have a nice day.
Yeah.
Try to stay cool and hydrated.
Yeah, you too. And like I said, I was going to have some waters, but I stopped at the store and they were too much. I didn't have enough to get. I didn't want to have only a couple and just give out a couple, so I didn't get any. But yeah, like I said, if you do some more research and you see me around, come back and talk again. It was really nice talking to you.
Yep, nice talking.